Country Profile Project. Our country is Senegal, and my name is Nishant. So let's start off with communicable diseases. And a pattern that I noticed in communicable diseases is that some of the most common diseases are also some of the most common causes of death. And on the chart on the left, you can see that there are 3 out of 10, 3 out of 8 most common diseases that are also prevalent in the most common causes of death in Senegal. The top being bacterial and protozoal diarrhea. And that kind of leads into the discussion that there has to be some type of unsanitary protocols in the food or the water that they drink that lead to such diseases, because diarrhea is oftentimes as a result of something that was in the GI tract. But more than the a lack of basic infrastructure and lack of hygiene and safe communities that Senegal has or doesn't have. There also might be another cause that I found through this article for that talks about the Grand Magal of Tauba, which is like a large mass gathering in Senegal. Many of these gatherings that happen, such as this one, don't really help with the spread of diseases in Senegal. If anything, they make them actually a little bit worse. This was a study that was done just to see how these diseases or how the population is impacted by such mass gatherings. Um, and mainly another factor that I found during my research for communicable diseases is that Senegal, while it is a low-income country, there is a little bit of hope in terms of the non-communicable diseases, which is seen through this graph or this chart. And we see that there has been a slow transition for Senegal from transitioning from a low-income country to a middle-income country. And usually what we see as our discussions from class is that when you transition into a higher-income country or a medium-income country from a low-income countries, chronic disease rates increase while infectious disease rates, such as communicable diseases, decrease, which is seen in the panel A chart here. Also, if you take a look on the chart on the left, the statistics show that infectious and parasitic diseases are nearly 4,000 and 4,100 and 3,500 or women and men respectively out of 49,000 that were taken in this that were taken as a result of this statistic. So what I'm trying to say here essentially is this number is extravagantly larger than some of these other numbers, such as the diseases of blood or 90 people or 90 women in Senegal or 374. This is 4,000, and that's just something that I found in relation to the communicable diseases. That while Senegal is transitioning from a low to a medium income country, you still have these prevalent diseases, but they are slowly decreasing, especially as you increase in terms of your age. And you'll see how this correlates with the nutrition and some of the emergency protocols in Senegal in the future as well. And next we have sanitation and hygiene.
So, as Nishant mentioned, there are several preventable communicable diseases, such as diarrheal diseases, that need to be addressed, and that brings us to the SENWASH program. And so the 2020 SENWASH program was facilitated to implement interventions related to access to water, hygiene promotion, and access to adequate sanitation. And so a total of 36,145 people have now gained access to adequate sanitation in the community due to this program. Here are a couple highlights listed in the bullets below. One important thing to note is that 69,080 people are now aware of good hygiene practices as a result. And so on the next slide, we have lifestyle changes. We know that they're aware now of hand washing, and because of that, there's this behavioral change, hopefully, that is being implemented. So that comes to COVID-19, which is this huge pandemic we're all going through, and everyone has been told to wash their hands and has been educated, or more people are being educated on that. And due to that increased hand washing and waste management, due to COVID-19 for the past 2 years or so, it's quite possible this is a likely cause of the behavioral change and will possibly continue to be a behavioral change coming out of it. On the next slide, we have the matrix. So as you can see here, we have a couple different things they implemented in boxes. So access to sanitation and lack of awareness are two big factors that are influencing the change of washing hands. So installing household hand washing facilities as they did, incorporating trusted leaders and radio station broadcasts for education, and also implementing hygiene, sanitation, and behavior change programs are all very important here. So now we're going to talk about climate change. On the next slide, we have climate change in Senegal. So we know the mean annual temperature has been increased by 1.6 degrees Celsius and is even higher in the northern parts of Senegal. There's been a 30% reduction in rainfall and extreme droughts as a result, but there is also frequent flooding, and that's just all due to climate change. And so to combat climate change, as you see on this slide, we can use climate smart agriculture. And so what that is it's genetic engineering to make plants more adaptable, higher productivity, higher yield, and mitigating issues. So as you can see, that's that little triangle right there. And so on my final slide for this, we see the smartness level of these different climate smart agricultures. So commonly used plants are groundnuts and cereals that are grown. And the longer it is, that means it's more popularly used and implemented. The method green means that it is the most popular, and the longest is the most smart or the most efficient in combating climate change. So both of these are very popular, and being able to use these should help in combating climate change.
So now I'm going to talk about women and children's health. So about 9% of Senegal's population is malnourished, and this number is even higher with women, especially ones that are pregnant and young children. So this graph here shows the percentage of children under 5 experiencing abnormal nutrition in 2019. So as you can see, about 75% have normal nutrition, but 15%, which is shown in that dark orange, is stunting, which means that their growth their height and or weight are below what they should be for their age. And then in the light orange, you see that about 6% are wasting, which means it's like an acute form of malnutrition. And there's a small overlap, and there's also a small amount of kids that are overweight, but it's not that much. And then in this next slide, you see the benefits of breastfeeding for women, because it's commonly known of all the benefits to the baby, such as developing the immune system and things like that, but it's not often talked about the benefits it is that are given to the women, especially when it comes to non-communicable diseases. So this shows that it helps with cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, type 2 diabetes, stroke, and depression. This next slide has a figure that really lays out all of the negative side effects of not exclusively breastfeeding, because only about 33% of women in Senegal exclusively breastfeed, which means that they could supplement with formula. So in the first box, it says that about 3,000 children die as a result of not exclusively breastfeeding, which could be from the not clean water that is put into formula. And so from this not clean water, they could contract pathogens or just get any regular communicable disease as previously talked about, and because their immune system will not be as developed, they don't have the same capabilities to fight it off. And with the pathogens that could be given through formula, this could cause 1 million or more cases of diarrhea and pneumonia. And then because formula and clean water costs money, all of this together could cost up to $70 million in household costs. And then all of the cost of the health problems, the weight that it puts on the healthcare system would be about $2 million. Okay, so on this slide, you see a picture that shows that you shouldn't be accepting water while you're breastfeeding or to supplement with your formula. And as we talked about in class, this is a really good image because it's culturally in tune and also doesn't have any words on it, so it doesn't require any level of literacy. This next image discusses a different women's health issue that we discussed in class, which is female genital mutilation. It says that about 25% of girls and women between the ages of 15 and 49 are subjected to this, which is about 1 in 4 women. In Senegal, particularly in tune with their population, this means about 2 million women. A lot of people, the majority of Senegal actually believe that it shouldn't happen anymore, but the majority of those people live in urban areas or are highly educated, so it's not really the same population that is being subjected to it. And usually it is very young girls, like under the age of 5, maybe up to the age of 10, but not very often after that. And you would think because of the rise in awareness of how it's not a good practice that the rate would be declining, but actually in reality over the past 2 decades, the rate is pretty much unchanged. And then this last slide shows, talks about family planning and contraception. So on the green line, you can see the modern contraceptive prevalence in married women. So as you can see, it is higher than unmarried women. And even that mostly has to do with the fact that they want to be able to space out the time between having children so they don't have lots of children, and also are able to really get their bearings and focus on the young children they have, because there's a lot of complete dependence on the mom for a while. And then even though you see that there has been an increase in the people who are able to access it, it is still true that about 30% of women who want to access contraceptive cannot access it.
And so now we're going to be talking about non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases are a huge problem worldwide, killing over 40 million people per year and making up 7 out of 10 deaths globally. 17 million of these deaths are people younger than 70, which they call premature, and the majority, 15 million people, of these deaths are between the ages of 30 and 70 years old. So these graphs show that the cause of death by non-communicable diseases as a percent of total deaths in 2019. So the graph on the left shows a comparison to countries of similar income statuses to Senegal and countries with much higher income statuses, to show that as countries develop, their deaths related to non-communicable diseases increases. And then the graph on the right shows Senegal in comparison to the world, to lower middle income countries, and to sub-Saharan Africa. So their cause of death by NCDs is significantly lower than the percent cause of death by NCDs in the world, which is 73.634%, and in lower middle income countries, which is 64%, but it's higher than the percent for sub-Saharan African countries, which is 36%. And then on my next slide, this shows the chart on the left shows the top NCDs causing the most deaths in Senegal, which are ischemic heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. And then the chart on the right shows the top NCDs causing the most deaths and disability combined, which are congenital defects, stroke, and ischemic heart disease. So with regard to SDG progress, NCDs are included under SDG goal number 3, and specifically target 3.4, which aims to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from NCDs through prevention and treatment and promote mental health and well-being. So Senegal has made significant progress in SDG goal number 3, but significant challenges still remain, especially with regards to decreasing the number of deaths by ischemic heart disease, because that has increased by 25.3% over the last decade and will continue to increase due to socioeconomic changes.
And now we're going to talk about nutrition. So in terms of nutrition, Senegal has been struggling with improving its current conditions. As you can see on the graphic at the bottom, Senegal is not really on course to meet any of its global nutrition targets. There's been slight progress made towards reducing anemia, achieving the low birth weight target, and exclusive breastfeeding targets, but that's really the only progress that's been made. And then, so on the next slide, we can see the dietary intake of key foods in adults 20 years and over. And as you can see, their diets tend to lack enough fruit, vegetables, legumes, and nuts and whole grains, and tend to be overindulgent in fish and red meat areas. And then to the next slide, this shows that dietary composition is one of the leading risk factors for some of the most deadly conditions like cancer, stroke, diabetes, respiratory disease, and coronary heart disease. And most of the lack of dietary composition comes from low fruit and low vegetable diets, which are really major risk factors. And then next, we're going to talk about disasters and complex humanitarian emergencies in Senegal. So the most prevalent natural disaster in Senegal is flooding as of recently, mainly in the Dakar region of Senegal. They experience annual flooding from heavy rainfall. People have been criticizing the government's management of these floods, which reoccur every single rainy season. And in 2012, a 10-year flood management plan was launched with a budget of over 1 billion euros. However, many of the Senegal people are demanding accountability because the flooding continues to be a major problem to homes and agriculture in the region. And it's been 10 years and it still is occurring. So they are not happy with the management of that. And in terms of humanitarian emergencies on the next slide, most of the humanitarian issues in Senegal come from the flooding. Hunger and homelessness are reoccurring issues every single rainy season. The most valuable humanitarian aid Senegal is in need of really right now is disaster risk reduction and emergency preparedness interventions to help with the flooding issues. Food insecurity and homelessness are also exacerbated by a high number of refugees living in Senegal that come from the country Mauritania. But there are also repatriation programs going on right now between Senegal and Mauritania, and a lot of the Mauritanian refugees are returning to Senegal. So that will ease the burden of hunger and homelessness, hopefully, on the Senegal people.